As the title suggests, I spent a hair over $4,000 on a pre-built TKL 10 keyless keyboard, which doesn't even seem that bad compared to how much I spent on a Circle T, but that's besides the point. This is the Norbauer Seneca, a built from the ground up, electrocapacitive, ready-to-type keyboard that is probably the best personification of fine, I'll do it myself in the keyboard space. And when I mean from the ground up, I am not kidding. To spending hundreds of thousands on developing rattle-free, lube-free stabilizers, to custom sliders, housing screws, collaboration LEMO cables, and GMK keycaps, this keyboard spares no expense. But the real question is it worth it? Like Mr. Norbauer says, on paper, nothing about this makes any sense. It's over the top, needlessly lavish, exuberantly irrational, and that's the point. So let's talk about it. Aesthetically, I would describe this board as retro-futuristic, similar to the Norbaforce line with the thick forehead, beefy bezels, and large chamfered angles. It's accented by the Norbauer logo and LEMO connector on the back with the authentication plate on the bottom. From the Edition 0 releases, there are a total of 4 options to choose from, 3 of them being aluminum and 1 titanium. I opted for the aluminum travertine finish, which is actually quite smooth for being a matte coating. I would describe it as a warm gray concrete-like color, if that makes sense. Personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of the 1973 keycaps that came with the board in terms of how it looked or felt, and given my room aesthetic, I opted to throw on GMK Cafe instead. Other than that, the Seneca's deceptively thin compared to traditional aftermarket TKLs, since it has a 0-degree typing angle, which is taking some getting used to, but the 3-degree walnut riser is helping quite a bit. Oh, and did I mention that this thing is monstrously heavy? Fully built, this board weighs 7 pounds. It's crazy. Feel-wise, this will be a little interesting to explain because this keyboard doesn't use the traditional MX style of mechanical switches, instead opting to use rubber domes and springs like other electrocapacitive and Topper style keyboards. I opted for the light version of the domes, and there's 0 pre-travel before a very slight tactile bump, leading to a prominent but soft bottom out. For those that have tried aftermarket domes, the closest comparison I can make is probably a crisper and more response Deskkeys BKE Pinks, but as the weight implies, each key is pretty effortless to hit, and my fingers don't get tired after typing for a prolonged period of time, like writing the script for this video. The other main thing that I wanted to touch upon are the stabilizers. So these are the first rattle-free, lube-free, effectively zero-tolerance stabilizers on the market. And as someone who's built over hundreds of boards and tuned over 1,000 sets of stabilizers, I can definitely appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears that went into manufacturing this. But I fear it's probably not going to have the same marvel for those that aren't as deep in the hobby, which totally makes sense. Regardless, if you wanted to learn more about these stabilizers, I highly recommend you check out the Keycron 2024 talk, which I'll have linked down below. Other than that, I'm going to grab a couple boards off my shelf just so we can play some side-by-side comparisons. Take these with a grain of salt because your auditory experience will definitely vary, but hopefully it gives you some sort of an idea for what the Seneca sounds like. I will say, out of my current collection, the keyboard that sounds the closest euphonically would probably be the Norbauer, which I think is kind of funny considering it's Ryan's first board to latest board. But overall, pretty decent fan of the Seneca sound profile. It's nice and soft, the mods and alphas are present without being overbearing. Girlfriend doesn't get mad when I'm using it. I just wish it was a tad softer, but I do know that desk key films and other silencing rings do fit in this, so another thing to keep in mind for that. So, back to the main topic at hand. Is it worth it? And I don't think that's a main premise for this keyboard, because if we wanted to look at it price to value wise, this keyboard's just not a good value proposition whatsoever. You'd be much better off, probably happier with a pre-built from China or any other keyboard manufacturer. The Seneca is meant to be like the Leica of keyboards, a buy one and done, appreciate the history and experience that comes with it, and just accept whatever quirks it might have. As someone who enjoys tinkering and modding almost anything I can get my hands on, I do want to touch on some of the drawbacks I have of owning the Seneca. One, there's no VIA or QMK support, so if you wanted to remap it, you're limited to things like power toys, auto hotkey, like carabiner. There's only one single layout. I would have preferred 7U and split backspace, but I'm kind of in the minority here. There's only USB-C on the PC input side. There's no Bluetooth or wireless for those that want it, and it's a pretty daunting teardown and rebuild process. I know I'm not the ideal customer base. It's probably someone who wants the best that money could buy with the least amount of blockers possible. Not everyone wants to wait for group buys, open up their keyboards, lube, slider, switches, what have you, and that's totally fine. My imagination is that it's someone who has like a Q43, drives a Lotus, and a Grand Seiko, would probably be someone who could appreciate the fine engineering and history and be willing to pay for it. The Seneca is an absurdly expensive offering in the space. Nearly $4,000 is an eye-watering amount of money to pay for something that sits on your desk. But I just want to reiterate that at the end of the day, keyboards are a niche luxury hobby. And like other luxury hobbies, there are cheaper alternatives that do exactly the same thing. The Lumix S9 I'm filming on is half the cost of my FX3, and my Mazda 3 gets me from point A to point B just like my 911 does. But it's the overall visceral experience that differentiates one from the other. Am I telling you to go and drop a down payment on a keyboard? No, but if you vibe with the aesthetics, acoustics, and if it's a price point you're willing to pay to experience something like this, then by all means, I would give the Seneca a look. I would be hard-pressed for you to be disappointed. At the very least, I would highly recommend seeing if you can try it out at a local meetup just to experience it yourself. Personally, for me, do I regret buying the Seneca? No, it's an amazing typing experience, and I think it just looks right at home on my desk. I do wish I could optimize a few things here and there than what's out of the box, but that's just me and my obsession with modding whatever I get my hands on. But do let me know what you think. These are just my thoughts on the Seneca. If you are interested, I'll have all the links down below. I'm happy to answer any other questions that come about it. But yeah, that's kind of all I got. Take care, have a good one, and I'll see y'all soon.